to the stream. I'm Tandy. Today we're going to be playing some Ygra Sack. We've been stuck on Ygra Eater of All for 2, maybe 3 weeks now, something like that. This brand new card from Bloomborough, just really catching my interest. 5 cost 6/6, legendary elemental cat. As ward, sack of food, so your opponent must sack of food, but it's a little tricky because the next line is other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their other types, and have 2 tap sack this, gain 3 life. And so essentially it's the same ward as like a Vein Ripper, where they have to sacrifice a thing. And then the last ability, whenever a food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put 2 counters on Ygra Eater of All, +1/+1 counters. So it gets really big. What this means is that when you have 2 Cauldron Familiars, you're able to sack 1 Cauldron Familiar to bring the other one back from the graveyard to play. And so 2 Cauldron Familiars either in play or in the graveyard, and a Ygra Eater of All allows you to essentially deal infinite damage, but you also gain infinite life, and you also can just essentially have infinity sacrifices and infinity enters the battlefield effects. And so when you have Ygra Cauldron Familiar, you just add infinity to the equation. And when you add infinity to the equation, the game breaks. And in a lot of games of Pioneer, breaking the game is one of the few ways you can win the game. We did it with Amalia quite often. It didn't quite go infinite, but 100 and an infinity in Magic are very close. Gaining so much life, blowing up the board. But this one goes a step further in physically ending the game when you do assemble the combo. But it's kind of surrounded with just a bunch of these moving pieces that all kind of work together. Generating food, generating resources. And ultimately, we have a few new ways to actually get Ygra onto the battlefield way ahead of schedule. So the first card I want to talk about is Scavenger's Talent. And now we've talked a little bit about Scavenger's Talent on the channel so far. For 1 mana, you get an enchantment that says whenever 1 or more creatures you control die, create a food token. It only triggers once each turn, but with Cat Oven, you could do once on your turn and once on their turn, and that's something that you need to look out for a lot when you play this deck. What's up, Ygra? Chapter 2, Level 2 says when you sack a permanent, target player mills 2 cards. And so you're going to be milling yourself looking for a Cauldron Familiar, but you're also going to be milling yourself looking for Ygra Eater of All, because Chapter 3 of Scavenger's Talent says, at the beginning of your end step, you may sack 3 other non-land permanents. If you do, return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. And so Scavenger's Talent is a self-sustaining way, or at the very least, it's a self-perpetuating way to establish all pieces of your combo, and all you have to do is mill yourself. And so by sacking food tokens, using Deadly Dispute, sacking treasures, Cat Oven, other ways of sacrificing, you're able to essentially mill yourself for 2 cards per. And when you find 2 familiar in a Ygra and you get it to Chapter 3, you're able to win the game. So that's kind of the gist of the deck. The surrounding cast is many things that we've seen before, but it's also a few cards that are kind of on the outskirts. There's a very popular build of Ygra right now that is Jund colors, and it's doing very well. And it's something that we've alluded to multiple times while playing the Golgari builds. The Golgari build strengths come from 2 cards. Gilded Goose, Mana Accelerator, that also just generates tons and tons of material for all of your mini combos. And also Trail of Crumbs, a 2-cost enchantment that's essentially a card draw engine that allows you to churn through your deck to find various pieces of your puzzles. These 2 green cards, along with Ygra, led me to build the early iterations of this deck, and I've been working on it slowly. And I've essentially narrowed it down to about 52 cards that I really like. And then we have essentially 8 free slots. And the 8 free slots are currently being filled with the following cards. We have 4 copies of Heaped Harvest. Heaped Harvest is 3 costs, search your library for a basic land, put it in play tapped, and then you can spend 2 to sack this and gain 3 life. But what it actually says is that when it enters or is sacrificed, and so you essentially get 2 uses out of Heaped Harvest to go get basics, and then you can use that mana to do whatever. The fact that it counts as a food is really nice for Gilded Goose. It's really good with Cauldron Familiar. You can sacrifice the Heaped Harvest to either of those. And also when you do sacrifice it, you can trigger Trail of Crumbs. Now, Trail of Crumbs requires an immense amount of extra mana to utilize. Not only do you have to find a way to sacrifice the food, but you also have to pay 1 mana to get the effect from the Trail of Crumbs. And so the Trail of Crumbs is very mana intensive, and so you really want something that can generate a lot of mana. And Gilded Goose is just not quite enough. Gilded Goose is extremely good with Trail of Crumbs, but it's not quite enough to make Trail of Crumbs fully functional. You need either like Cat Oven, so you can be sacrificing the foods and only paying 1 to get a card. But we are using Heaped Harvest as a way to generate that extra mana. Heaped Harvest also ramps you up to 5 very quickly, so you can hard cast Ygra. The Scavenger's Talent lets you cast it for very cheap from the graveyard, or play it from the graveyard for very cheap, but the Heaped Harvest lets you cast it from hand very quickly. One of my favorite sequences with the deck is to turn 1 Goose, turn 2 Heaped Harvest, and that gets you all the way to 5 mana on turn 3, as well as getting an extra land on the following turn. The other cards in the deck that are kind of filling out the flex slots, we have 4 copies of Deadly Dispute. I've ranged from 2 copies of this to no copies of this. And with Heaped Harvest, I think playing 4 is correct. Not only do you just have a really powerful target with Heaped Harvest, but Deadly Dispute also helps you ramp to Ygra, and it just plays into the theme of sacrifice very well. And I think that sacrifice decks will tend to be better when they're able to play 4 Deadly Dispute, and so you should tilt your deck to be able to play 4 of them. The Heaped Harvest is just the newest way where we can get extra value out of Deadly Dispute. We have 1 copy of Shambling Ghast. This is a very cheap card that allows us to sacrifice it to kill an opposing creature. It plays defense quite well from small creatures. We can sacrifice it a number of ways and get a treasure that can help ramp us. Overall, it's been medium. I've liked it when I cast it once, and I've disliked it when I cast it once. Mana base, we're pretty heavy on basic lands to fuel Heaped Harvest. I'm at 7. I think 7 is a lot of basic lands, but I think somewhere close to 7 is necessary for Heaped Harvest. If you play 3 Heaped Harvest, you can probably play 6. If you play 4 Heaped Harvest, I would recommend at least 7. I have run out of basics exactly 1 time in 4 matches, and it was because I drew a 3rd Heaped Harvest, and I think the 3rd Heaped Harvest is usually pretty weak. But the 1st and 2nd one are often very good because of Trail of Crumbs. Heaped Harvest is seeing a lot of play in Standard right now in Devotion. It's essentially 2 ramp effects for 1 card, and if you can find a way to sacrifice the Harvest, it's just so strong because you get the primary ability of the card when you sacrifice it, which is search for a land. I'm curious if we should be playing more expensive cards in this deck to utilize the extra mana from the Heaped Harvest, but I have not figured anything out, and so I'm instead pushing towards permanents that can allow me to spend a lot of mana, like Trail of Crumbs and Scavenger's Talent. With that said, I would very much like another creature land or 2, maybe Hive the Eye Tyrant, maybe Lair the Hydra, because we get so deep in the game with mana. But overall, I just need more things to do with Heaped Harvest mana, is where I'm feeling right now. But the deck has been a well-oiled machine, and I'm currently 4-0 in a league. Today on stream, we're going to watch those matches because I played them off stream, and then we're going to play our 5th match and try to get a trophy, and I hope that is something that you enjoy watching. Let's get to it. Reveal Gigantha. We keep our opener. Our opener is 3 land, Fatal Push, Trail of Crumbs, Witch's Oven. And on my turn number 1, and we're going to go over the game as like I want to talk about the different plays and stuff. And so turn 1, we can hold up Fatal Push or we can play Witch's Oven. Because we're on the play, it's not super common for our opponents to play a 1-mana creature, especially since we don't know the matchup. And so using our mana efficiently, I want to lead with Witch's Oven. Now, depending on what they do on turn 2, we may want to go for Trail of Crumbs. And now, they have shown us that they are also a sacrifice deck with their own Witch's Oven. And so now my only goal is to race. And so I'm going to go Trail of Crumbs, Heaped Harvest, and then I'm going to dig for ways to win the game. That's kind of where I'm going now. We need to find Cauldron Familiar. We would like to find Ygra or the other one. So now we're going to go for Heaped Harvest. They have Cauldron Familiar and Witch's Oven, so they're going to be able to ping us some, but that's not really what this matchup is about, and we're not really scared of what's going on the other side until they get Mayhem Devil in play. or they get Ygra in play. Fable the Mirror Breaker, a very strong card for them here. I'm going to keep ramping with Heaped Harvest and look for interaction as well as card draw. We have Trail Crumbs, and so we can't start doing the Trail Crumbs this turn, but we can start doing it next turn, and we'll have a lot of mana. So I'm going to play the Shambling Gas and hold up Fatal Push. You want to try Abzan with 3 Caretaker's Talent and 3 Warden plus a Clue Maker. You're having a blast and it's doing very well even when you are disrupted. Ooh, that sounds very cool. I've been thinking about an Abzan build. So they go the Cat Oven sack route, and the moment they sack the cat, I'm going to use Fatal Push on the Fable, and that's going to keep them from getting an extra food token. They discard a Cauldron Familiar, and they play a second Fable. So at this point, I'm pretty scared. I don't really... This is a third cat, which is not a huge deal. But now, with so many cats in play, I no longer can really win the game with Ygra. And so I think the way I win the game is actually to mill them out with Scavenger's Talent. Or I can slow grind them, but it's very hard to slow grind them because they have Witch's Oven, Cauldron Familiar as well. So I'm going to sack a couple of the heaped harvests to get some lands. To note, you should dig for land after your... Sorry, you can either dig for a land with heaped harvest. You can stack it so that your heaped harvest goes on the stack either before or after Trail Crumbs. If you really need a land from the Trail Crumbs, you should stack it so that your heaped harvest resolves after the Trail Crumbs. Sometimes you will reduce the number of permanents in your deck by a certain amount, and you might want to, keep a higher density of permanents to find off of Trail Crumbs. And so I'm doing it so that I can hit, because I have increased the non-creature count a decent amount. I'm at, I believe I'm at 10 non-permanents, 4 Fatal Push, 4 Deadly, 2 Bitter, something like that. And so I miss, and after sideboard I miss often as well. So right now, I'm not feeling great about where we're at. Because they have only 1 Witch's Oven, and because they have no food in play, I take the time to kill one of the Cauldron Familiars with a Shambling Gas to make sure that they can't attack me with a lot of cats. I'm not sure if that's correct, but I felt like taking some material from them in a spot where they were unable to get either cat back was okay. Although, in hindsight, watching this back, I'm not sure that that was the correct play. We could be blocking the Goblin Shaman and then sacking to make treasure, and then using that treasure to dig for Trail of Crumbs. We're at 15, so I don't feel that scared, but they just have the hammer, and they play Ygra, and then Ygra plus 2 Cauldron Familiars is game over. And so, at this point in my league, I'm thinking to myself, my deck's not very good. The Heaped Harvest did the thing. I had tons of mana, and I just got pooped on by what I would consider to be one of the top 3 decks in the format in Ygra Sack. They are doing the same thing as us, except they get to play Fable the Mirror Breaker and Mayhem Devil. That's where I'm at right now. So my sideboard, and we're not going to be able to see how I sideboard exactly, but we have 4 Leyline of the Void, 4 Pick Your Poison, 4 Thoughtseize, and 2 Meathook Massacre, and the Gigantha. And so all of these can potentially come in, and I think I brought in some combination of Leyline of the Void and Pick Your Poison, and I think that is correct. Alright, so game number 2. I need to figure out the buttons better for the replays. Alright, so game number 2. Ancient Runing game I actually have, and I have written a full sideboard guide on it on my Patreon, and you can go read it right now. Alright, so we are going to be on the play here for game number 2. Let's reveal our Gigantha and get our opening hand. So, my opening hand looks quite strong in this matchup. We have the Leyline of the Void for turn 0, and that should shut down all of their graveyard-based shenanigans. And it should just make their life way difficult. And because of Leyline of the Void, I actually think that the Rakdos decks either need to play more green sources for Pick Your Poison, or they need to play the enchantment that... the black card that kills enchantments or creatures, Feed the Swarm. Feed the Swarm is something that you should have in your Rakdos decks, and it's something that I have in mind, and I highly recommend it. So Leyline of the Void opener with Scavenger's Talent. This is exactly where you want to be. They also have Leyline of the Void, so this could be a grindy game. And we may use Scavenger's Talent to just try to mill them because neither of our decks really function that well at the moment. I drew Deadly Dispute, which is incredible with Heaped Harvest, and we're going to just keep ramping. Luckily, Heaped Harvest doesn't say dies. It doesn't say go to the graveyard, and it says sacrificed. And so we can sack out Deadly Dispute and still get the land. Yeah, that's the problem still moves. It's too hard to play the third color. They have Mayhem Devil. We are taking some damage, but we don't have anything that's really that big of a deal here. We drew Pick Your Poison, and so now we get to kill their Leyline of the Void. We could go for Chapter 3 on the talent, and that's going to allow us to potentially win the game in a few turns, but we are mostly out of material. But we have stopped their Leyline, which is a big deal, and we have our Leyline. We drew Gilded Goose. Now, one trick with this deck that I think that most people don't know is that you can sack a creature to Chapter 3 of Talent, and then you can bring that same creature back. And so right now, my graveyard is pretty weak, and so what I would like to do as the Talent player is I would like to sacrifice or I would like to make a Fountain Port, and then I would like to sack the Goose, the Fountain Port, and the food token to bring back Goose, but it'll also mill me for 6. And milling me for 6 helps me find Ygra. It helps me find what else help me find? It helps me find Ygra, and it helps me find Cauldron Familiars. I don't think I do that. I think I just use Fountain Port to chump block. But I think that if I were playing this game again, I would main phase Fountain Port, and then I would sack the 2 creatures and the food token to get back to Goose. Yes, we take 3 damage from the Mayhem Devil, but we're at a point where that just doesn't matter that much. Because the damage all has to target face. So they play Ygra, so I'm pretty scared right now, but I'm going to go ahead and just mill myself for a little more, and we find Cauldron Familiar. And now if we find Ygra ourselves, we can potentially win the game. All right, well, we found Ygra ourselves. So now we can start by returning some stuff from the graveyard to mill ourselves. And now we're just looking for the second Cauldron Familiar. And we're going to play a Ygra. And then we can essentially spend the next few turns digging for the other Cauldron Familiar. And if we ever find it, we win almost on the spot. We can also just sack the Goose, the Familiar, and the food token to mill ourselves for 6 and bring back the Goose, which is what we do. And now if we find a second cat, we should have enough food to get the job done. They target me instead of Goose. I think that this is a minor mistake. And we do find the second Cauldron Familiar, and so now we win the game. And so even though they have Mayhem Devil, our iteration of the 2 Cauldron Familiars will infinitely grow the Ygra, and it will also deal infinite damage while gaining life. And it only costs 1 sacrifice to gain a life and deal damage, and their Mayhem Devil is only able to deal 1. And if they ever target a creature of mine, either if it's the Ygra, that ability gets countered because they can't sacrifice, a million permanents or whatever. But also, targeting the Cauldron Familiar doesn't work because I can sack the Familiar to get back the other one. And so game 3 was really about Leyline of the Void and Scavenger's Talent. And game 1 was all about them just having Ygra combo. All right, so opener looks pretty good. Another 3-lander with just a bunch of really strong cards. So we have Fatal Push, which is our answer for Mayhem Devil. And Mayhem Devil is the one card that I'm really afraid of in the matchup because it punishes me for doing the sacrifice stuff. But it also is a way for them to win the game outside of Leyline of the Void. Do you keep Ygras in the mirror? I have to in the Golgari build because I don't have Mayhem Devil. I have to. You can maybe make an argument that you should just try to deck them with Scavenger's Talent, but that's almost as bad because they can just get their Ygra back from the graveyard as well. And so I keep Ygra in this build, but in the mirror matches of Jun Sack, I think you should definitely cut them because you have Mayhem Devil. All right. Great opener. Opponent leads with Scavenger's Talent. We don't have anything to kill it just yet. Our first draw, Leyline of the Void, but we'll match their Scavenger's Talent. Next turn, we have Trail of Crumbs, but we may want to Fatal Push this. This is pretty scary in general. We drew Goose, so now we have a great way to use our mana with Goose into Fatal Push. And I am willing to trade Goose for Bloodtithe Harvester there, which is why I didn't kill it. But also, I just want to save it for Mayhem Devil. If they had used Bloodtithe Harvester for Goose, I think that's really good for me in general. We're going to go for Heaped Harvest, and then we're going to use it with Goose and Fatal Push the Mayhem Devil. And what this allows me to do is essentially turn Mayhem Devil from something that's very scary into something that only just deals me 1 damage. We don't want to over-sacrifice things with a Mayhem Devil in play, but we need to make sure that Gilded Goose stays alive for as long as possible. And so Heaped Harvest, going to get a land, and then sacking it to go get another land, and Fatal Push is just a really nice sequence. We did draw that second Fatal Push, so now we do have an answer for the Blood Tithe Harvester that's in play, but it's still anybody's game. Main phase Deadly Disputes. All right, we're going to play Leyline of the Void here to stop any of their Cat Oven shenanigans. They Blood Token in response. And now we can go block Cat and then Fatal Push the Harvester, and this is going to protect our life total significantly. Their Leyline shuts down most of their deck. If they play Ygra here, we can maybe do some blocking. They find Haywire Might, which is actually really interesting against the Leyline of the Void. So now we're going to pivot, and we're going to go for card advantage, and we're just going to start ramping up as much as we can and using Trail of Crumbs. And then we'll pad our life total. Since they don't have Mayhem Devil in play, we're not really in a lot of danger on our life total. We're going to just use food tokens to gain life when we can. They go to level 2 of Talent, and they bricked again, so they're going to attack me. And now, they tapped the wrong mana, though. They definitely should have tapped one of these. Let's see. I would like to see what they milled over, because this mistake could cost them. I don't think it ended up costing them at all. They milled me instead of themselves. They milled over 2 Trail Crumbs. Interesting. Or I guess that... Oh, sorry. They killed Trail Crumbs instead of Leyline. Regardless, they tapped mana incorrectly because they had to sack treasure because they used green. But the argument of killing the Trail of Crumbs over the Leyline of the Void, I think, stems from a misunderstanding of their situation. They are about at parity on resources total, but with my Trail of Crumbs in play, I will accelerate ahead of them in terms of resource generation, but if they are unable to generate resources, they can never keep up with my deck at all. And so my deck doesn't use the, we're not as soft to Leyline of the Void as they are because we just have, the Trail of Crumbs. And so it's a really interesting thought. Like, do I target the Trail of Crumbs or do I target the Leyline? Unfortunately for my opponent, I did have a backup Trail of Crumbs, which I'd been kind of sitting on the whole game. And so I'm able to essentially go back and keep the chain going. We're going to just mill our opponent. And my goal here, I think, is to deck my opponent with my Scavenger's Talent. And we're going to utilize all the extra mana from the Heaped Harvests and the Gilded Goose to do so. We can also just hardcast this Ygra. As long as we have Leyline active, the 2 cats from our opponent are not going to be very threatening. They drew another Haywire Might. And again, they target the resource generator, which again is not a bad idea, but it's just not going to work. We're going to go to level 3. They have Leyline though, so we don't want to sack anything. We could just sack stuff to mill them for a bunch of cards. But at this point, they're basically out of gas. They drew another Leyline of the Void. Scavenger's Talent doesn't work. My Leyline's still in play because both of their Haywire Mites targeted my Trail Crumbs. And essentially what ended up happening was that I was able to punch through in the resource generation game thanks to Trail of Crumbs. And game 1, I got kind of cheesed by Ygra combo. Game 2 was a very even affair where I started with Leyline and they were unable to put up much resistance. And then game 3, we both had Leyline at various points, which kind of shut us down. And then Trail of Crumbs carried. And my favorite part about this deck is Goose Trail of Crumbs and the fact that it can just churn through your deck and allow you to just like fight through Thoughtseizes, removal spells, all sorts of stuff. I've won games where I've got hit with Farewell. I've won games where I got hit with Temporary Lockdown without killing it. Just a very resilient deck is Ygra's Sack. So that was match 1 against the Jund Menace, the new iteration of Jund Sack. 1-0. 2 land, Goose, 3 Deadly Disputes, and a Heaped Harvest. This is going to be, in my opinion, the test for Heaped Harvest to see if it's any good. Turn 1 Goose. We're on the draw, but turn 1 Goose, turn 2 Heaped Harvest is an extremely powerful opener. very similar, in my opinion, to the Goose into Trail Crumbs openers. The resource you're generating is mana as opposed to raw cards off the top. But against the Yorian decks, I think that this is a really good opener because I don't need Fatal Push. Confirm you're not interested in playing in paper? This deck is not nearly as much to keep up with as the Mayhem Devil build, I think. But that's fair. Opponent leads with World Tree, so now I know that they're doing some weird stuff. Portable Hole on turn number 2 on my Goose is a bummer. Here, okay, this is actually a tough one. So, I don't 100% know my opponent's playing, but the World Tree is throwing me for a loop, right? And so the thing I think when my opponent plays World Tree is I'm thinking Spelunking. And my opponent may have a god that allows him to do some sort of cool Spelunking combo. But mostly it's like Spelunking plus Scape Shift is kind of what I'm thinking. They show me Riveteer's Outlook, so now I know there's probably Lotus Cobra, Nissa, Aftermath Analyst, probably Scape Shift, probably Spelunking. And so now out of the 80 cards, I know roughly half of them. With Portable Hole, I think you can guess at least 2 or 3 Portable Hole. And so now from just these 5 cards that my opponent has shown us, or 6 cards if you count Yorian, I know roughly half their deck, maybe more, and I could probably surmise another 20 cards if I really had to think about it. World Soul's Rage, you know, maybe some sort of sweeper, maybe Bring to Light, maybe something like that. And so on my turn 2, I can play Trail of Crumbs or I can hold up Deadly Dispute. And my thinking is that Trail of Crumbs is something you play when you have a lot of mana already and you can utilize it. And Deadly Dispute is something you play if you're very light on mana so that you can hit your land drops. And so because I have the food token and because I don't have very much mana, I chose to pass turn so that I can Deadly Dispute on end step. And I think that that's correct. All right, no land still and no land still. So 3 more cards, no land. So now what do you do if you're me? So if I'm me, which I am, I think you just main phase Deadly Dispute again and look for another land. But I think that you can make a really good argument for casting Heaped Harvest here. Heaped Harvest off the treasure is pretty solid. It goes and gets you a land, but we're missing a land drop naturally. And Heaped Harvest is so much worse when it's just being your land drop as opposed to accelerating you and being like food for stuff. With that said, if I do cast it this turn and go get a land, next turn I can sack it to Deadly Dispute and really keep churning. But my logic is that I just really want to hit my land drops naturally, and so I think I'm going to main phase the Deadly Dispute. The main phase Deadly Dispute, we do find the land, and we're going to go ahead and play Trail of Crumbs. So Trail of Crumbs, I think, is the most efficient use of the mana, because it allows me to spend 2 mana proactively. But I think that, I don't know, there's not really a better line. I was thinking maybe we could do something else, but it was a forest, so no better lines. I changed my mind. Trail of Crumbs pretty good. Lotus Cobra, very scary, and Leyline Binding on the Trail of Crumbs. Okay, so our opponent is doing this thing that we love. They are interacting with us. And when our opponent interacts with us as a deck that's like a card advantage engine deck, I find it that they run out of resources far before we do. And so I'm way more afraid of the Lotus Cobra than them trading 1 for 1 for my stuff. And so now at this point that I can kill the Lotus Cobra, they just have 4 lands in play. No Omnath, nothing really that scary going on. And so now I think Fatal Push, Trail of Crumbs, Tap Land is probably my line, but you could make a good argument for Deadly Dispute into Fatal Push. But because we already have the land, I think that line is just a little bit worse. You always have to be aware of food token versus treasure token as well. They get a little confusing sometimes when you play Deadly Dispute. Personally, anyway, for me. So Escape to the Wilds. So this is another thing I want to talk about. So Escape to the Wilds is a very powerful card. Obviously, they hit very poorly. They escape to the Wilds into 5 land. But if that were Bring to Light for Valky, or if that were a threat, you know, if they had cast a threat there of any kind, I would feel way more scared of my position in the game than if they cast Escape to the Wilds. Even if they show me some sort of like 2-card combo here that's like maybe a little hard to disrupt, or maybe even like one of a 2-card combo and like a removal spell or something. I'm just like way more afraid of Bring to Light than I am of Escape to the Wilds in general. And so if you are building like a Rampy deck, a Lotus Cobra deck, just keep in mind that like maybe you should just be playing Bring to Light. You know, it's a tutor. It goes and gets one of your best threats. You can kind of hybridize your Bring to Light deck into your Escape Shift stuff so that you can Bring to Light for Escape Shift in some spots, or you can just Bring to Light for Valky when you're not ready to kill. And if my opponent had done something like that, I think my chances of winning would be very small. But because they had such a bad Escape to the Wilds, I think my chances of winning here are very good. So we're going to go for a Deadly Dispute. We're going to draw some cards. We could play Scavenger's Talent and start leveling it up, but I think that just going draw some cards, make some mana is a bit better. And now we're not that close to killing, but the game ends very quickly once Ygra is on the battlefield. Opponent plays Spelunking, is able to play a few more cards. The Omnath Locus of Creation is very, very scary because it means that they have a ton more mana to do things with their. They have a ton more things to do with their mana. So, Deadly Dispute plus Ygra allows me to get a bunch of micro combos online. We're able to get extra mana as well. Now opponent has Omnath plus Lotus Cobra plus Leyline Binding, which again I am perfectly okay with because we just have another Ygra, and I'm not dead. Whenever my opponent plays a big ramp deck like this, I always am just kind of afraid that I'm dead. So here I go for chapter 2 of the Scavenger's Talent, and we're just looking for more things to cast that aren't the Ygra, because we want to essentially push towards winning the game. But because we drew Goose, we have the ability to chapter 3 this, and we could have sacked Trailcrumb's Goose Food to get back just Cauldron Familiar or just Goose, and that would have milled me for 6 pushing towards Ygra. But now, because my opponent, I know that they have Yorn in hand, they're going to blink everything and disrupt me pretty heavily. But once I play Ygra, if I'm able to generate 1 food and I can find 1 more Cauldron Familiar, the game should end. And so I don't want to expose my stuff right this moment if I can help it. So they attack with Omnath. I think that this is a mistake, and I'll explain why. I don't have Cat Oven, I have Cat. And when I have Cat, being able to block is a big deal because blocking is free thanks to Scavenger's Talent, getting a food token on my opponent's turn. And so attacking here leads me to believe that they have some way to exile my cat before I block. And if they don't, then it's just a pure mistake. But I think bringing it back here is okay. They have to have an instant speed thing like a third Leyline Binding, and I'm not really concerned with Leyline Binding on Cauldron Familiar. And so that means that this attack with the Omnath is just a pure mistake. Because it just gains me a life. And it leaves me at the exact same number of food. It actually also lets me mill 2 more cards, which is sick. So here's Yorin. Let's see what they do. They're going to blink a bunch of artifacts and enchantments. They leave the Ygra on under lock and key, which I think is correct. They give us a Goose back, which I think is mid. And I think that they hit 2 Trail Crumbs, but I think when they do that, they lose. Let's see what they choose. Okay, so 1 takes Talent, so they leave me with Trail Crumbs. In response to them targeting the Scavenger's Talent, I'm going to bring back 1 Cauldron Familiar, and I found another Cauldron Familiar. And so now, with Ygra double Cauldron Familiar, the game is over unless they have a counterspell or another instant speed piece of interaction. But even instant speed interaction on my creatures is not that effective, and you'll see why when we get to that point. I think the game's bugged out. I'm sorry. Or I'm not really sure what's happening. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm tanking. I think, oh, I'm tanking on this Spelunking. I guess. No, that's not what should be happening right now. Okay, so basically, I'm just gonna stop the game here. My opponent doesn't have anything. They have disrupted my board pretty heavily. I play Ygra, and I bring back Cauldron Familiar, second Cauldron Familiar. If they have any instant speed interaction for 2 mana, if they target Ygra, they have to sack something. If they sack something, great. Even if they sack something, guess what I can do? I can sack a Cauldron Familiar to a Cauldron Familiar and bring that Cauldron Familiar back. And so even instant speed interaction doesn't stop Ygra and 2 Cauldron Familiars. What you need is something that eats the graveyard or something that keeps the cat from using its ability. You can Pithy Needle this. It's not a super effective Pithy Needle, but you certainly can. But two cats plus Ygra is the combo. And once we have this, the game is basically over. Alright, game number 2. It was a very fun game. I'm sorry that the conclusion was bugged out, but it may be because it overloaded from the triggers and it just kind of got stuck. That happens occasionally on the replays. Okay, opening hand, quite good. While I don't think Fatal Push is... So Fatal Push's strength comes from being able to destroy creatures that are very cheap and put a lot of pressure on you. But there are other matchups where the fact that it has Revolt is actually a bigger deal. And this is a matchup where having Revolt's a big deal because we can use it to kill Omnath, but we can also use it to kill Nissa. 3-mana Nissa and Lotus Cobra are prime targets. And while I would normally board out Fatal Push against decks that play, you know, Arboreal Grazer and Spelunking and things like that. And this matchup in particular, because of the mana generators, the Fatal Pushes are quite good. And so my hand looks great. Drew Blooming Marsh, so we have land number 3 rolled up for Heaped Harvest. Flugmaster Redeem the Owen Wilson. Hold on, I gotta do this. Hold on. I had something for this. Wow! Alright, Fatal Push on the Cobra, and now we get Cat Oven online, and we have Fatal Push for their next threat as well. Yeah, the timer going throws me off, but we'll just say that, I mean, the Spelunking was on the stack for too long, you know, no matter how long I was thinking for. So here's Heaped Harvest, and now we can sack Cauldron Familiar, and then we can sack Heap Harvest to bring it back. And so we get access to our 5th mana source next turn as well. Exactly, Appleton. Well, how I won also matters, and me having experienced the match, I'm just telling you that's what happened, and that's makes sense enough to me. But don't sleep on the ability to sack Heap Harvest to Cauldron Familiar. I think that interaction is going to come up quite often, and the extra mana can be extremely important in some spots. Here, because we have an extra food, I'm going to use Deadly Dispute. I'm going to sack the cat, and I think that that's something that some people might not do. They might sack the food instead. But if we sack the cat instead, we get to deal an extra damage because we get to bring it back. Also, attacking for 1 is great. We drew another cat, and now we have 2 cat ovens, 3 cat ovens, but more importantly, we have Fatal Push, and they're very low on life. And the Cornucopia will, hurt that, but not much. So we have the option there to sack the Cauldron Familiar in response to the ill-timed explosion, but I'm actually just like kind of fine if they discard 2 cards, and I was kind of baiting them into doing it. And maybe that's incorrect because giving your opponent a choice is often wrong, because the choice sometimes is bad for you. And so you make a play that forces their hand. In this scenario, I think it is extremely good for me if they discard 2 cards. And mostly because I just have the foods rolled up. And the only thing I lack is the ability to attack with 2 cats instead of just 1 cat. But now we just bring back cats, we just do some draining, and then with Fatal Push, I feel fairly confident that it's very hard for them to kill us. Thoughtseize takes Omnath. Let's take a look at their hand first. Give me a second. Okay, so they end up conceding, but this is their hand when I Thoughtseize them. Pop it out so you can see it better. Okay, so I Thoughtseize them, and I take the Omnath. That's a card that I take, but I want y'all to see what I looked at when I Thoughtseize them. To note, they played Cornucopia and then nothing, and then 1 turn later they played Ill-Timed Explosion and then did not play a land drop. And so when I drew the Thoughtseize, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to take like a temporary lockdown, or I'm going to take something that's going to destroy my entire side of the board. But when I look at their hand, nothing is very scary. I actually had to read Annie Joins Up. But again, this is if Escape to the Wilds was Bring to Light, I might have had to take Bring to Light over Omnath, and then they get to play Omnath, and then they can, if they draw a land, they can play a land, and they can gain 4 life. And so, if you're playing a deck that plays Omnath, I would just highly recommend thinking about playing Bring to Light. It's just an insanely powerful card. It works very well with Omnath. You can play a ton of cool one-ofs. If you're already doing Scape Shift shit, it tutors for that too. Annie Joins Up. This is not a real Magic card. I think you should not play this card. Just play Elspeth, or not Elspeth, Elish Norn instead, right? Yeah, so 1 Leyline Binding doesn't do anything. The Omnath is the only thing that can really get them out of this, I think. And so I take that. I leave them with these 6. Then they concede. They were not even that dead, I don't think. I think they had 1 more draw. All right, opener is, this is in the dark. We have 2 Fatal Push, a Deadly Dispute, and a Goose, and 3 land. I think that most of your openers should look very similar to this, where it's just a pile of cheap cards that are all pretty good in a number of matchups and situations. And this is a very easy keep. Harvest is a really clever idea with cat. Yeah, it's something that I thought about ever since I saw it in the domain lists. Okay, so this is actually something. This is a mistake that I made. In the dark, I don't like taking damage from my lands, but what I like less is playing a pathway on a color that is like the minor color of the deck. And by playing the Goose on one, I've essentially said that I can't play 2-push, I can't play Deadly Dispute push, I can't play Cauldron Familiar unless I sack the food. And if I had played Overgrown Tomb instead, I could go Cat Fatal Push, move on with my life, look for Deadly Dispute on the following turn. Now, because I didn't do that, I think what I am going to have to do is Deadly Dispute the food token, but I don't even remember what I did. So let's take a peek. All right, so cat plus nothing, cat plus push. So cat plus push is like a fine way to like rebuy the tempo that I've lost from not shocking on turn one. But with them showing me this, I can kind of assume that everyone who's playing Rakdos right now is playing Junsack. And because of that, I think that saving the removal spell for Mayhem Devil makes more sense, especially if I'm going to use the food from Goose that aggressively. So I think overall, I'm playing somewhat poorly in this spot. Okay, but now I know that they're not sack. I know that they're not sack because they show me Inti, and so now we can surmise roughly 40 to 50 cards in their deck, and so now we know they're probably Agatha Soul Cauldron. They're probably Tree of Perdition, and the Tree of Perdition builds can get a little scary because they're able to punch through with Inti to give trample, but they're also able to just set our life total to 2 or 3 from Agatha Soul Cauldron into Tree. And on top of all that, the Agatha Soul Cauldron is actually just an excellent anti-graveyard card against us, and so my Scavenger's Talent don't work that well, and my Cat Ovens, I have to be very careful with them. So now I see the Inti, so now I know they're probably Agatha Tree. I have the push for this. There's no way that I can keep them from getting a trigger off their blood token, and so my goal here is essentially to Deadly Dispute, Fatal Push, attack, something like that. Heaped Harvest changes things a bit. I'm going to go for that, and then I'm going to sack that to the Goose, and then I'm going to push the Inti, I think. I can also block plus sack Heaped Harvest. They discarded Tree, and they reveal Blood Crypt. So I will go ahead and kill the Inti. But now they have Tree, but they don't have Soul Cauldron yet. Fable the Mirrorbreaker, I'm not very scared of. At this, they play the land off the Inti. I'm essentially, at this point, just worried about Agatha's. Agatha's plus some direct damage. Scavenger's Talent, excellent draw. We get to send it up to Chapter 2. And then we get a Deadly Dispute and get a treasure. And then now we can also bring it back. Now we have Witch's Oven 2. So now, as you can see, this is how quickly the game turns. We went from being mostly out of resources with just a Deadly Dispute in hand, and now we have Scavenger's Talent with a big graveyard, a Cauldron Familiar in the graveyard already, and we even drew into Witch's Oven. And so now all we need to draw is Ygra, and once we draw Ygra, the game ends. And we don't have to draw Ygra. We have Scavenger's Talent to mill ourselves for 2, which we can do roughly 10 times in the next turn cycle. From Cat bringing back to sacking it to Oven, treasure token, we can make a token with Goose, we can sack a token with Goose. We can mill about 20 cards. We can mill about half our deck looking for one of the 3 Ygras that are left. And that's what our goal is going to be here. So they attack with the Goblin Shaman, and this is another mistake. This is another way for me to... Actually, no, this is not a mistake. This is fine. This is them getting a treasure. If I didn't have the Witch's Oven, there's a chance that this is a mistake if they can't use the mana. But it's probably also fine even if they do. So this is a play that I'm making that I'm not sure is correct, and I want to talk about this a bit. So when they attack with this, I no longer care about the card Fatal Push, because they didn't push my Goose, and they didn't do anything to my Goose that would allow me to think that they have spot removal in hand. And so because I have the Scavenger's Talent just kind of churning, I think that I'm going to win a longer game. And if I win a longer game, that means that I want to trade for this Goblin Shaman, and because it also removes a piece of their material from the board. for Agatha's Soul Cauldron. So Agatha's Soul Cauldron here is actually kind of scary still. And if I can kill all their creatures, I can make the Agatha's Soul Cauldron much worse. And so I'm going to choose to mill myself some, but I'm really choosing to bring back both Cauldron Familiars so that I can double block the Goblin. And I do have a food coming, so I'm not locking myself out. All right, so now we're going to gang block. And this removes their creature from the board, and it hurts me very little. And there's also no reason for me to main phase bring anything back, so we're just going to wait till our turn. Flame Cash Gecko, a newer addition to these decks that's looked quite good. Being able to loot, being able to just have a free creature when we're pinging, all very strong. I would also like to maybe try Flame Cash Gecko in something like Onicult Anvil. Onicult Anvil seems good. Okay, so now we're going to try to mill ourselves. We're going to try to find Ygra. We're going to bring back Cauldron Familiar. We're going to Goose. We're going to Witch's Oven. We're going to put this to level 3. We got a lot of little mini things we can do here with all our mana. And again, this is all fueled almost entirely by Heaped Harvest, which got two of these lands that are in play all by itself, while being food for various things. All right, so mill ourselves again. Mill again. Okay, and so this is a trick you can do. So my graveyard is giant, but I haven't found a Ygra yet. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm trying to sack as many permanents as I can to mill myself for 2 to find Ygra, because when I get to chapter 3 of this, I can get Ygra back from the graveyard. When you have a cat in the graveyard, you can sacrifice a food token to bring it back, but the ability goes on the stack, and the cat stays in the graveyard until that ability resolves. And what you can do is you can hold priority, and hold priority might be a confusing term for some of you, so I want to try to explain what's happening in the game engine and why we're doing it, how we're doing it. So in Magic, the traditional back and forth is a person who is active player, like it's their turn. They say, okay, I would like to do a thing. I am doing this thing, and then I'm passing priority to you. Me as a defending player, I can say, okay, that thing resolves, or I would like to respond to your thing. A secret third option that almost never gets used, it's used very rarely, is what we call maintaining priority or holding priority. And what happens with that is that inside the game engine, you are allowed to put multiple effects on the stack at the same time, or at the very least in sequential order, without having any of them resolve. And this is just a semi-advanced technique where if we have a Cauldron Familiar in the graveyard, we can sack a token, mill ourselves for 2, the abilities on the stack, and then with that ability still on the stack, we can let everything on top of it resolve, and then we can do it again. As long as we have food. And so one Cauldron Familiar in the graveyard can actually let us sacrifice infinity food that's in play with just one activation without the need to sacrifice it. Sacrificing it obviously is good if you have a way to do that, like a Wolfstrider or whatever. But so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm holding priority. I'm sacrificing multiple tokens because my intent is to mill as many cards as possible looking for Ygra. All right, so with Buy Gigantha, we ran out of food. And now I have the ability to sack 3 things to bring back 1 thing. And I could sack 2 Cauldron Familiars and the Goose and bring back a Goose. But I think that just mills me a bunch. And it doesn't actually accomplish that much other than maybe guaranteeing that I have a Ygra in the graveyard next turn. But I think I'm somewhat guaranteed to have a Ygra in the graveyard next turn no matter what. There's 3 in my deck. There's 26 cards. It's not a guarantee, but it's extremely likely. It was extremely likely that I killed them this turn, and I missed. And so now I have to make sure I don't die. And the only way I can really die, they have Tree of Perdition, so the only way I can really die is Agatha's Soul Cauldron. And so maybe it was correct to sack everything, because I think Agatha's Soul Cauldron still just kills me. Because they have Voldaren Thrillseeker, but maybe not. But if they played Agatha's Soul Cauldron, I think I was just going to die. They Fatal Push my Goose, they don't attack, and now we have the ability to do some blocking if we want. We choose not to. They buy Gigantha. Now, we just have the ability to churn through like the majority of our deck. We're going to start by sacking Cauldron Familiar. We're going to draw 2 cards. So this is this is going to be another micro trick. So when you have cards in your deck that say if you draw them, that's bad, You should do as much as you can before you draw those cards in terms of zone manipulation. So when I'm milling myself, this first Deadly Dispute I think is fine to just draw 2 because we have enough mana to cast the Ygra. This second Deadly Dispute is pushing me closer and closer to being unable to cast the Ygra, and so drawing the Ygras is actually worse than milling them. And I want to give myself the ability to mill myself when I have 3 Ygras in my deck for as much as I possibly can before I draw cards in my deck that has a bunch of Ygras in it. And so for the second Deadly Dispute, I'm going to put it on the stack, mill myself, and then I'm going to sacrifice a bunch of things in response to that, all looking for Ygra to go into the graveyard. And so I want y'all to understand why I'm doing the thing I'm doing so that you can maybe make that decision for yourself. So I missed again, and then I missed again, and then I hit. So now the game's over. So we're already at chapter 3 on talent, so now we just need to make sure that we have 3 pieces of material. We're going to move to Instep. We're going to get Ygra. Game's over. Game 2. So I think I mis-sideboarded in this matchup. So my first sideboard plan involved Leyline of the Void. And while Leyline of the Void is good against the Soul Cauldron Tree Perdition part of their deck, it's really bad against the rest of their deck. And I really dislike Leyline of the Void in matchups where it feels bad. And so I have Leyline of the Void this game in my opener, and then in game 3 I don't have it anymore. And I just wanted y'all to know that that was my thought process behind it. I should probably keep Bitter Triumph in my deck. I should probably keep all my Deadly Disputes, and I should probably bring in Meathook Massacre. Their deck is way more creature dense than I originally surmised, and I think that having more removal in my deck is better than having Leyline of the Void. I got the Soul Cauldron is just going to be good against us no matter what. I was afraid to bring in Pick Your Poison as an answer because Pick Your Poison gets bricked by the blood tokens, and so I didn't think it would be that good. Opener, Leyline, Goose Harvest. Excellent. This hand is actually pretty good against the Leyline start as well because we don't use the graveyard that much. Yeah, a couple Haywire Mites is probably worthwhile. I kind of built this sideboard inefficiently, but I want to fit Leyline in the Void. It's probably something like 3 Pick Your Poison, 2 Haywire Mite. We just got to cut back on some stuff. So we have the turn 2 Heaped Harvest, and then turn 3 we can sack it again and keep ramping. Next turn we can just cast Ygra on 3. And Ygra on 3 with a Leyline of the Void in play is pretty good. So they have Leyline and we have Leyline, which means that Ygra's buff effects aren't going to work that well. It does work with tokens because tokens ignore Leyline of the Void. But Ygra specifically says dies, and the Heaped Harvest does not. So now they're just going to gum up the board, and they're just like putting us in a pretty tough position in terms of physically winning the game. But we have a big creature, and we're just going to keep riding that. And hopefully at some point we can draw an answer to the Leyline of the Void. And now I think for game 3 I'll bring in Pick Your Poison as an answer for Leyline, and sometimes we can hit Fable, sometimes we can hit Cauldron, but most of the time it's going to be difficult. But I think the real mistake here is just having Leyline of the Void at all. I think it just doesn't do enough. Like, we can look at their Exile Zone. Yes, they have Agatha's Tree, but they also just have a very stellar opener here, no matter what, and Leyline. And so, while my Leyline maybe shut down their tree stuff, I'm not really winning this game anyway. And so I need to be focusing on other stuff. Maybe, primarily my own combo in executing it, as well as protecting my combo from Leyline of the Void. And so even a full swap of 4 Leyline for 4 Pick Your Poison gives me just like a way to do this. I think that's fine. At this point, I only have like 2 Boseiju in my deck. My draw is like very heavy on mana. I'm going to keep attacking because it's like pretty scary for them. We're going to grow with Food Token. Now, Food Token in Ygra is weird, and I want to clear up exactly why this works. So Ygra says whenever a food is put into a graveyard. Leyline of the Void specifically says if a card is put into a graveyard, and a token does not count as a card. Leyline of the Void is templated very strangely. Often has weird implications with creature tokens. In this instance, though, it's Food Token. Any argument for keeping one ley line after sideboard? Yeah, sure. You just like demise people. Just cheese them. Sometimes you gotta cheese them. At this point, though, Ygra doesn't break through. Ygra doesn't win the game on its own. And this kills me, so we're done. All right, so game 3. We'll take a look at our opener, and we'll also take a look at how we sideboarded. So our sideboard for game number 3, as you can see, we've cut the ley lines again. We left the Bitter Triumphs, the Deadly Dispute, and we brought back in the Shambling Ghast, and we brought back 3 Pick Your Poison. All right, opener. Quite good. Scavenger's Talent, Goose, Familiar. My heart says lead with Scavenger's Talent because it can get Thought Seized. And I don't know what I chose in the moment because Goose on turn 1 is also pretty sick. But I think playing Talent first makes sense. They mulligan to 5. That's good news for us. Oh my god, I'm so good. Pass me so smart, chat. Alright, Voldaren Epicure. There's Cat and Goose. Harvester, no big. We can just push it. Second Pick Your Poison, actively horrible. Offering trades all day, every day. Inti, very scary. Inti, very, very scary. It gives Trample as well. They found Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which is a brick. They don't have a land, also nice. So, I can go chapter 3 of this. Play that, make a food. And now, I can sack food, Goose, bring back Goose. And that mills me for a ton. And it allows for a Ygra next turn to be lethal. So let's see what they do. I think that the cycle some food and a Goose to bring back Goose and mill myself for a ton is a uncommon play that will get more common as people realize that it is good and that it is something you can do with Scavenger's Talent. It's not something that I even realized I could do at first. We're going to bring back a Cauldron Familiar and we're going to block the Epicure. This is going to give us a food token. Another Harvester, not problematic. And now we just want to try to mill ourselves until we find Ygra. Start by bringing back a Familiar. We can sack it. We found the Ygra, so the game should be over. I don't think that they have anything, and I don't think that they could have anything in this format. So, in a turn, we're going to sack 3 things, bring back Ygra. As long as we maintain 1 food, we're able to bring back Cauldron Familiar. And we won with 2 Pick Your Poison in hand, which means that it kind of meant we were both on mulligan to 5, but I had a couple answers to a potential Leyline of the Void. And so their opener, they likely mulliganed at least one of those 2 times looking for Leyline of the Void, and they did not find it, which means that we get to play a normal game with them on 2 fewer resources. And we don't have Leyline in our deck, and we do not have that problem. And their deck is not as vulnerable to it anyway. If they had the mana to cast the Agatha Soul Cauldron, which would have been very difficult, it was like turn 3 or whatever. It could have been difficult. But because we had time, we're winning on turn 5, like most games, right? And you'll notice that with this build, thanks to Heaped Harvest, we just have the ability to accelerate more quickly. We have the ability to get talent up to level 3 more quickly. We have the ability to use Trail Crumbs more easily. All right, so that's that round. All right, opener. This one is a bit wonky because we have this Ygra hanging out. We don't have anything to do on 1, and we're on the play. So turn 2, we can go Trail Crumbs or Bitter Triumph, and turn 3, we can either Harvest if we draw the land, or we can maybe Deadly Dispute if we play Trail Crumbs. Would the food trick work if opponent had Rest in Peace instead of Leyline? I'm not sure on the wording of Rest in Peace versus Leyline, Nikki. I'm sorry. If so there's a difference between the word card and I guess we can just look up Rest in Peace. It says cards and tokens. Card or token. So it specifies tokens on Rest in Peace. All right. So they play Rakdos Theater. This is the 3rd Rakdos out of 4 that I played so far. I'm not sure if this is the mirror. I can't remember. I went to bed right after this match, so this was a tough one. All right, Blood Tithe Harvester on 2, still unsure exactly what's going on. We did luckily draw the Shambling Ghast to be able to play on turn number 2. We could have played Trail Crumbs, but because I had the Deadly Dispute, I wanted to play the Shambling Ghast instead. But we're going to Deadly Dispute, and we're going to draw 2 cards. And once again, we miss on lands. And so now I'm starting to think that like maybe I should have more lands in my deck because we have the Heaped Harvest. But that's like a slippery slope. The more lands you add, the harder it becomes to really like play longer games because you just flood out too much sometimes. And so if we do end up adding a 23rd land to help with our Heaped Harvest cast on 3, we need to basically cut these Bitter Triumphs. I think if we cut the Shambling Ghast and these 2 Bitter Triumphs, we could play another land and like 2 permanents that are cost 1 that we can sacrifice or something. But that's just like more tweaking that we'll do later. All right, but we're gonna play with what we got. We haven't mulliganed too much this league. Opponent's gonna start pounding us with Inti, and so now we know that we're playing against Tree Perdition once again. So we're playing against Jund Sack, 2 Tree Perdition, and a Yorian combo deck. They have Fatal Push for our Goose. We're in some trouble. We're going to Deadly Dispute, and luckily we drew 2 lands, but one of them, unfortunately, is another Blooming Marsh. We're going to Bitter Triumph the Inti here. We should have main phased this while they were tapped out, because now they get an extra Inti off the blood. That's something that you need to keep in mind while you're playing against Inti. If they're tapped out and they have blood tokens, it's good to just pop them. So at this point, they have played Ygra's Soul Cauldron, or Agatha's Soul Cauldron, and so now Ygra in my graveyard is no longer viable. I discarded it to Bitter Triumph in the hopes that later I would be able to bring it back with Scavenger's Talent. But because I had played, some mana acceleration the turn before, perhaps I should have held on to it and maybe discarded something else like the Blooming Marsh that I drew. But I was just kind of afraid of missing land drops. But at this point, I'm under a lot of pressure. And I chose even to take a hit from these instead of Bitter Triumph on this. And the Voldaren Thrillseeker just kills me. So I was very behind because I missed land drops. But I think I played very poorly in the mid game as well. All right, my opening hand. We've mulliganed to 6. I keep a hand that has Pick Your Poison, Ygra, Heaped Harvest, and I think I put back a Witch's Oven. I kept the 3rd land for Heaped Harvest, but I also kept Pick Your Poison for Leyline and Soul Cauldron. Unfortunately, this is just not effective against the deck as I would like, and so we likely will just play like 3 or 4 Haywire Mites instead, because we need to be able to kill Agatha's Soul Cauldron. They Thoughtseize me, and they take Ygra, which leads me to believe that we're in trouble, but the Heaped Harvest off the top solves a lot of our problems. And now with Trail Crumbs Heaped Harvest, we have enough mana to really leverage the Trail Crumbs. Thoughtseize leaves me with a Ygra again, plays another Agatha's. They only have 2 cards in hand. We drew land number 5, so we're just going to hardcast Ygra on turn number 4. And now we just have a big thing, and we can use this to pressure them while we use Trail Crumbs to dig for more stuff. And now we are obviously in a lot of trouble if they find Tree of Perdition, but that's going to be the case a lot of times. If I played against things like Splinter Twin quite a lot back in the day, and Splinter Twin is one of those cards that will just beat you sometimes, and you have to ignore it. We're going to attack with the Ygra, and now we can food plus Trail Crumbs, which we'll do now. And then we can save another Trail Crumbs for next turn. And we find Scavenger's Talent. That's good. We hit them for 10 down to 4. And so now they're in chump block mode for the rest of the game. They Takenuma, get back, I believe it was another Blood Tithe Harvester. They should attack me for like 3 here. I think not attacking is a mistake, but they're just very scared of the Ygra hitting them. And if I have 2 Fatal Push, they die. Or something similar. But I think because I have like Meathook Massacre in my deck, maybe they shouldn't. Oh, I guess I revealed Giganthus, so I don't have Meathook. I think I should be bringing Meathook, though, and I'll probably do that for game 3 if I recall correctly. So they chump block, Ygra gets bigger, we find another talent, we're going to play it. We did miss on one of our Trail Crumbs triggers, which is a bummer, but we hit on the other one. So they blood once again, and they don't have Tree of Perdition once again. They Fable the Mirror Breaker, and now I think I'm in trouble. We drew Pick Your Poison, so now Fable's down. And now we'll just go Talent Chapter 2, Talent Chapter 3. And now I can just sack the Ygra. to get back Ygra and mill myself for a ton if I want to, but I choose not to. I think at some point I choose to when they tap out. And I think that that's just something you got to look for with Agatha's is when your opponent makes a mistake, you have to really punish them. So they're just presenting blockers a bunch. And this actually has happened multiple times now, if you notice, where I get Ygra. My opponent is playing a deck that has a bunch of creatures. They're just able to block very easily. And so now my thought process is, should I be playing something that grants trample or unblockable or something similar in order to make Ygra a real threat on its own? And my conclusion is that the only thing I could really think of is Rogue's Passage. Rogue's Passage is the only thing I can think of that would be a viable land we could play this colorless that can give this unblockable. Yeah, Audacity just needs way more targets, so unfortunately. All right, so let's get a bunch of Innkeeper's talents up. One's on chapter 3 already. And so with this triggering, so here's the thing, chat. My opponent says, I'm going to eat a thing. And I say, okay, eat your thing. I'm going to I'm going to sack 3 things and bring back Ygra after sacking the Ygra. And if I mill 2 Cauldron Familiars, you die. Did I hit? Did I hit? I think I hit 1 Cauldron Familiar. If I hit 2 Cauldron Familiars, my opponent lost the game. Instead, I only hit 1, so we have to keep playing. And now I'm just trying to dodge Tree of Perdition forever. We're going to start with an upkeep, mill myself for 6. We have enough food tokens where if they try to Agathis me, I can go again. I guess I should have done this also while they were tapped out. And I think I F6'd on accident. And while they were tapped out, I could easily kill. But here I think I can probably kill. And this is 12 cards left in the deck, and there are 3 Cauldron Familiars left in there. But now we're at a spot where if I sack this 3rd food token, they can eat the cat in response, and so now I must wait. But I think now even if they have Tree Perdition, I'm not dead. Because this doesn't have anything very scary under it. So they discard some random creatures. They have Thrill Seeker. But we have 12 cards left in deck, and so it should be somewhat trivial to find another what you calls it. So they didn't find anything off of the Inti. We were going to block, which is 10, and then there's no way for them to really kill this. And if they can somehow throw lethal damage at it, we can even just sack this food for 2 mana to grow it by +2/+2. And so that's game 2, I believe. And now we get a fun one. All right, opener. Looks pretty good. We have Cat Oven, Goose, Triumph. Because of Thoughtseize on 1, we can't prevent from it. And so I think when we're on the play, we want to protect our cards from Thoughtseize, but when we're on the draw, we just want to be as mana efficient as possible. Turn 1 Raucous Theater, put Tree of Perdition in the graveyard is terrifying, chat. So we're going to play Goose on 1, and then our plan is to go Familiar Oven, Talon on 2. And hopefully they just play Blood Tithe Harvester or something. Alright. Alright, so Cat Oven Talent is just like starter pack for Cat Sack. And we're going to main face Sack because we can block on their turn and get an extra food. And that's something that if you play this version with Scavenger's Talent in general, you need to be looking to sack stuff on your own turn. Alright, so they're going to attack, discard a card. We are going to bring back Cat and block because it's free. Because when the cat dies, we'll get another Scavenger's Talent token. Food token. And so it does trample, but we just take 1 less damage from the attack, and then we can drain them for 1 extra as well. Alright, no Fatal Push on the Goose. That's good news. We're bringing back the cat now. I'm not sure if it's correct to do that now or later. I think it's best to do it now. Drew another cat. We're going to go level 2, though, and we're going to start churning, looking for Ygra, and we're also going to start milling. And now we can Bitter Triumph on the Inti, and we'll do that essentially in response to this blood token, but we'll see what they do. And I'm at high enough life total where It's okay. We're going to bring back the cat. We're going to mill ourselves for 2. And I can actually just wait on this Bitter Triumph if I want to, since they waited on the blood. So now they play Cauldron. And so now our choices are weird. So we can kill the Blood Tithe Harvester now. And that'll take away one of their creatures. We can kill the Inti now. And that'll also take away one of their creatures as well as their ability to trample. And then, but if we wait for them to target with Soul Cauldron, this just automatically has Tree of Perdition ability. And so then we're just stuck with, if they Thrill Seeker us onto the Inti and then throw it at us, we can die. And so we're at a point where we have to make the first move. But now when we Bitter Triumph, before the Soul Cauldron comes down, we kill this. And then Tree of Perdition plus this is not very scary. And then that means... now, alternatively, we can wait for them to kind of go for it, and if they go for it, then we should be able to kill them with Ygra next turn because we have this Bitter Triumph. But if we kill it now, I think it's just way safer. I think that this is a very complicated situation that I am unsure of the exact correct play because the card Agatha Soul Cauldron is so complicated. But I like my line of kill Harvester now. Killing Harvester now takes a lot of pressure off of me, and it makes it so that Ygra has to be the thing that they sack, or that they eat. Alright, so we can just take this 3, no problem, or we can block to get a free token. I'm going to block and get a free token. And now I'm going to bring it back, I think, so I can attack. And now they just pitch. And they Thoughtseize my familiar, that's fine. We have 2 food tokens, so the Agatha Soul Cauldron can't eat the Cauldron Familiars. So we drew Boseiju, just an absolute heater of a draw. All right, we're going to mill ourselves for 2. And now we're essentially threatening to win the game with the Ygra. And so we're going to make some extra pieces of material here, as we've been doing the whole game. And now we're going to move to Instep, and we're going to see how they act. So if they don't eat Ygra right now, they lose. So my guess is they eat Ygra. Okay, so now after they eat Ygra, though, we have a lot of different ways that we can approach the rest of the turn. We can sack Cauldron Familiar food token multiple times. And if we find Ygra, we can still kill, but we might be light on material to use Chapter 3 of Talent. And so we have to be a little conscious of that. And so I think the best play is actually to just do it one time, just to see if we hit. And then, if we don't hit, we just go for Boseiju and Agathas. The second iteration here is fine, but it makes it much less likely that we have enough material to Ygra. But we missed again, so we're just going to go ahead and blow up Agathas. And now we just hope that they don't have a haste creature plus another Agathas, I think is the joke. We are going to sack the Cauldron Familiars, and we're going to bring back Goose, and this is just going to allow us to just continuously mill ourselves so that we can look for another Ygra. And we are 29 cards left in deck. They do have another Agathas. This is a very scary spot. We're definitely going to just take this damage. But we can, they discard a card. What do they find? So now we have Perfect Info. They have Blood Crypt. So we can bring back Cauldron Familiar and block, which we could have done. But because we only have the 1 food, Agathas could eat it in response. And so we need to wait. All right, so we're going to start with Cauldron Familiar. They're very low on life here as well. The Cat Oven stuff has been very draining on them. But Agathas here makes it so that the Ygra kill is just like not that feasible. And so now my plan is to pivot and to go for the goose kill, or to go for the cat kill. So we're going to make a food with the goose. I'm going to push the Inti, but I'm also going to just sacrifice a bunch of stuff and bring back cat and just keep doing that. And cat plus these tokens plus everything should just be enough with them at just 7. The Fatal Push on the creature, one thing you need to know about the Tree of Perdition Agatha stuff is that Agathas doesn't grant haste. And so if you're able to keep their creatures off the board, the Tree of Perdition stuff is much weaker. I think our opponent played it well, trying to use Agathas to prevent my Scavenger's Talent from killing them. But ultimately, the threat of Scavenger's Talent Ygra made it so that their Agathos was purely defensive instead of offensive for game 3. And I think that was it's not a mistake. That's just the way that the game played. Okay, so that's where we're at. We're 4-0. We got one match left to try to get the 5-0 chat. Do you think we can do it? Opener is quite good. We'll keep turn 1 Goose into Trail Crumbs. We're on the draw, though. Opponent revealed Yorion. So this could be a slugfest. Very long match. Yeah, I'm not super into Hayward Might in that build, Chris, because you just have so few green sources. I actually really like Feed the Swarm. I think Feed the Swarm is a really nice answer to Rest in Peace and the enchantments that you can't beat. Hayward Might does hit artifacts like Grafdigger's Cage, but you just don't see Grafdigger's Cage too often. Not anymore. Not with the Molly gone. Fiend's Tower. Thunder Trap Trainer. Okay, so this might be a combo deck. If they are doing like did they miss? They missed. Good news for me. So this might be like Jeskai Ascendancy combo kinda. Alright, so we'll just play this and wait till end step and we can draw a card, or we can Fatal Push depending on what they do. Yeah, I had quite a lot of fun talking about my matches just now, Chad. I hope that you enjoyed it as well. Alright, so let's just go for Trail Crumbs to make a card. Another Goose. My Yorion's kind of wild, chat. I'm not gonna lie. Alright, let's go Cauldron Familiar. I think I'm just gonna go Goose Goose. Just keep holding up push. We're kind of overextending into stuff, but I honestly just don't know what my opponent's playing. And right now, I can just still use Trail Crumbs like crazy and to refuel. And so I want to essentially explode onto the board for as much as I can in a short period of time. Portable Hole, great. They're going to go for Trail Crumbs. We'll make a card. One thing I love about Trail Crumbs, it's also been very good at finding more Trail Crumbs. And Besage you to get it back. Chain to the Rocks. Okay, so this is going to be probably a very fair Yorion deck. It may have Jeskai Ascendancy style combo also, but the fact that they have so much removal leads me to believe that we are doing things correctly. Losing the Cauldron Familiar there is a little bit of a bummer. I'm going to go for a Deli Dispute, sacking a food. Found a Ygra. I'm going to play one Oven. They go. Buy Gigantha at some point if we want. If they go for Yorion here, I'll push this in response. And that means they're probably not going to bounce anything. Because giving me back either of the cards is pretty rough. Alright, now I'll just play Ygra. And if they go to kill it, we can sack it to Witch's Oven and get an extra food. Next turn, we can maybe buy Gigantha. Look at potentially playing it. If they don't have a good way to kill Ygra here, that'd be really nice for me because we can start putting a lot of pressure on their life total with these food tokens. In a turn, we can sack a food, sack a treasure, make a food, and that'll grow Ygra. We lose a treasure, but we do grow Ygra by 2. I think the faster we can force a chump block on Yorion, the better. Alright, so this is probably going to target the Witch's Oven. I think that's okay. I don't think we want to sack a Goose in response, so we'll just let it happen. So now I'm very confused as to what's in their deck. Maybe this is Enigmatic Incarnation. Alright, so we'll go make a green. And then we'll go make a food. Okay, so we can get back portable training ground, trail crumbs off of portable hole. I want to attack first. Maybe I can kill them if they don't block. Because goose can eat itself. We can make a food with a goose, eat a goose, eat a goose, eat a food, eat a food. So that's 2, 4, 5, 6, 12. Okay. Do I have mana to play the oven? Maybe not with Boseiju and Trail Crumbs, so let's just attack. If we attack and they don't block, we'll do math. But there's a good chance they just die to this Ygra. If they don't block it. My guess is they'll block with... Okay, that's fine. Alright, so we'll get a little guy. Alright, so I'm going to Boseiju on this. They get a land, but we get Trail Crumbs back, and now we can start doing some seriously dirty stuff. Boseiju on our trail. Okay, so now we go grow Ygra, Trail Crumbs. Take another Ygra in case this one dies. We'll go eat this token. I want to use as little mana as I can here, I think. Fountain Port's pretty good. And now we can make a food. And now we can sack the food and get another card off of it. Take the gas, just another thing. We gain some life. We get a food off of this as well. We'll go get a basic. I guess we can get Overgrown Tomb. Wish I had a tap land. Surveil land. Alright, your turn. One card left in hand. Yorion down the drain. Let's see what they got. They have no material if they are playing Enigmatic. So now they're in chump block mode. We have Fountain Port, which we can use to draw cards. Unearth Return King. Okay. So this one's pretty scary. They can give haste. They can put a counter on something. We're very high on life total though. So they have. So does this mean they just have an answer for a Ygra? Boseiju is a great draw because it means that this is lethal. Alright, I'm going to sack this food and draw a card. Alright, I'm going to attack. If their last card is Leyline Binding, we can just Boseiju the Leyline Binding. And then our creature will not leave play. And they'll sack Yorion probably. And that's how you beat them. That's how you win with just a regular old Ygra. What's the Shambling Gas for? It's a great blocker, but it's also just material for Deadly Dispute. I saw it in one of the Rakdos builds and it looked good. Okay, so I think Pick Your Poison and Thoughtseize are both great. I think Fatal Push is quite weak. And I'll keep the Bitter Triumphs. I think Shambling Gas can go. So these 8 coming in. These 5 out for sure. And then maybe we can go 1 Deadly Disputes, 1 Ygra because the game's going to go long. And I like Heaped Harvest. So maybe it's a land on the draw. And maybe it's just like a Darkboard pathway. I don't think it's Heaped Harvest. And it's probably not. Maybe it's just like not all the Thoughtseizes. But I think this is a matchup where these 8 are going to be good. Maybe we can cut an Oven and a Familiar. Is that weird? Probably bad because they just have lots of ways to exile them. Alright, let's try this, I guess. I don't love cutting the Deadly Disputes, but there's a good chance they have Temporary Lockdown. And Deadly Dispute is significantly bad against Temporary Lockdown. In general, I think Dispute gets much worse after board because almost every deck has a way to constrict you on resources, destroying your permanents and stuff. And Deadly Dispute just thrives when you're kind of goldfishing. Okay, no green mana. I think we have to mulligan this hand. If this were a green mana, we'd be very happy. I think we can pretty easily mulligan in matchups like this, though. We don't have to keep weak hands that are speculative. This hand's quite good. We're going to keep. I'm going to put back Bitter Triumph. I just don't foresee myself needing it for some time. And I'd rather keep Pick Your Poisons to unlock Trail of Crumbs. Beanstalk. All right, we'll Pick Your Poison that probably. Although, they're not going to trigger it next turn, so let's just do this now. And then we'll get a free card off of our Trail of Crumbs. And then next turn, if they have like a way to kill Trail of Crumbs, we can do double Pick Your Poison and get the Beanstalk and the thing. Okay, that's fine too. Beanstalk and Trail of Crumbs are very similar in nature. They just lean into really long games. They work great in multiples, but only for the cast, not for triggering each other. Ultra Familiar, fine draw. Alright, so let's go Pick Your Poison. Each opponent sacks an enchantment. Claymore Toby, thanks for the raid. Appreciate it. Each opponent sacks an enchantment. Let's play Witch's Oven over the Familiar. And then we'll just go for a Trail of Crumbs activation again with Goose. And we'll just keep riding this wave for as long as they let us. Hopefully we can find Boseiju to protect ourselves from Enigmatic. If they go Fires Enigmatic here, I think we're probably dead. We just don't have enough in play yet. But the way that their deck is constructed, it seems way more like a grindy mid-range deck. And I don't even know if they're playing Enigmatic. That's just kind of my what I'm thinking. They might be playing Bring to Light. Hope you had a good stream, Claymore. And thanks, Raiders. Welcome. All right, so they target probably Trail of Crumbs. We'll go for food. Take Dark Boar. Thunder Trap Trainer, okay? All right, so they do find Enigmatic, so I was right. Next turn, they can sack Binding and get a 7-drop. Hopefully we draw Thoughtseize or Boseiju or something. All right, so we'll go for Trail of Crumbs. All right, just find another Trail of Crumbs. I'm just going to play 2 Cauldron Familiar and hope that I don't die next turn. If they give my Trail of Crumbs back, they need to physically like win the game. And they can do a very good job of making my life miserable. All right, so fires plus eating mag means now they can get a 5-drop, and I'm curious exactly what they're going to do. But they could also get binding and get a 7-drop. I should probably sack a Cauldron Familiar here. I don't know if I can get punished in some way, but allowing them to get a thing that comes into play to kill something like Elishnorn static or something like that. I can't think of a reason to leave it, but I also can't think of a reason to sack it. And so I think it's harder for them to interact with both when they're like this. Just ordered 2 Ygra and 4 Scavengers. Nice. It's a great card. Okay, so they are going to sack the fires and go get a 5-drop. This is probably Elishnorn, and I should have brought this back. But if I don't do that, they do something else. Enters a target card, exile target card other than a basic land card from an opponent's graveyard. Search that player's graveyard, hand, and library for any number. So you're going to take all my pick your poisons. Okay. Exile them. Then that player shuffles. For as long as you control Kotes, you may play one of the exile cards. You may send them as any color. Okay, so they can pick your poison me now. This was a mistake bringing back Cat there. I just was trying to hit F6. So now they can pick your poison next turn. Trail Crumbs. Going to activate twice. We're going to leave open Boseiju mana. I think Heaped Harvest is worse than a land, but not by a lot. But only because I can Boseiju if I find it. Alright, so Goose, Witch's Oven. So now they just get to Enigmatic every turn, though, which is problematic. And I don't think that I'm going to be able to beat it with my current setup. But we're going to play it out and see more of their deck. Another fire, so now they can get another 5-drop. And also pick your poison at Trail Crumbs. Another Enigmatic, so now they can get a 5 and a 7. Alright, we're going to sack both cats, and then I'm going to bring back one. This is going to hedge my bets against something that sweeps and something that eats my graveyard, as well as Elishnorn. I think it's very minor, but sometimes the very small thing is the thing that changes the game. What's up, Jessica? Doing pretty good. Playing for the trophy here. We're up a game, but we're losing this one. I don't know that we've lost this one necessarily, but we are losing. So here comes a 5-drop. My guess is Elishnorn, and then 7-drop is going to be something that steals everything. I don't really have a good kill spell for this. Oh, I do. It's bitter. I have bitters. Okay. So now they get double steal, though, and this is going to be bad for me. It's permanent don't trigger either, so Trail Crumbs doesn't trigger either. They don't even sack to go get a 7. They're just going to go get another 5. And if it's Kinrith is going to close the game very quickly because of Trample. If they don't have anything to do with this Agoth Triumph, I think not playing the Pick Your Poisons is a mistake. Because the Kultos Silent Spider allows them to. Cavalier of Dawn. Okay, so they're going to give me some 3/3s. But I can't really win the game anymore. I need to draw... What do I need to draw? Scavenger's Talent? Scavenger's Talent I can win. I need it now. If I draw a kill spell for the Elesh Norn, I can win. Oh my god. You can fly! You can fight! And you can. Thank you so much, Joey, for the 73 months tier 3 out of your mind. Appreciate you. All right, so Ygra is going to hit the bench. We're going to sacrifice it. Make them sack of food. You the real MVP. All right, so one chain on that, one chain on that. So we go sack you. Sack you. We can still just like bring back Cat to block over and over again, which is pretty funny. And so while the Elesh Norn is protecting them from getting Cat comboed, they aren't physically winning the game for a few turns, probably. I agree, Rinro. Okay, each opponent sacks a creature with flying. Okay. Goose down pillow. If they attack with everything, I might double block the Kotos and then chump block one of the 4s. Now they get to Enigmatic again. My cats are going to be in the graveyard, though, so if they have something that eats the graveyard, we're in trouble. But we've been in trouble for years. We've been in trouble since Enigmatic was cast. The fact that we're not dead yet is actually miraculous to me, but they're setting up various lock pieces to prevent me from doing stuff. Sack Beanstalk to get a 3-drop. Wonder if this is just Skyclave to eat this. Detention Sphere. One on the oven, one on the food. Okay, so we'll sack the one that's targeting a food. Ovens are down, and so now we need to draw something. Trail of Crumbs. Miss. Bummer. All right, we'll say go, and now we can block, and then we can bring back creatures and pay mana for Trail of Crumbs. I'm like super impressed that I've been able to just tread water against this draw. Any inkling to play Convoke with Mollygon? Yes, quite a bit actually. I did post my updated sideboard guide on Patreon, or not sideboard guide, my updated list on Patreon. I do not have a sideboard guide for Boros that is new. I do have a Ygra Jund Sacrifice sideboard guide that I posted a few days ago that I think is very useful. I saw a block. Scavenger Town off the top wins. I mean, it's very close. They still have 56 cards in their deck. Okay, let's see what they sacrifice. They're going to probably sack Fires. They might sacrifice Beanstalk, though. We can make a food on the end step to just keep food production up, which I kind of like. Chain of the Rocks, sack, so then go get Thunder Trap. Okay, so they get 2 Thunders. Alright, one's Binding. The other's a miss. Alright, so let's go sack of food. Pay 1. Talent, okay. We'll bring this back. Do the same thing here. Yeah, 6 mana for level 3 is good. I'm going to take another town over a Ygra, I think. Oh no, that just wins the game. They have Leyline Binding though, so it's not quite there. So if I have 2 talents, I can go talent chapter 2, talent chapter 2. My problem is that I just don't have food production, so I think it's actually just Ygra. So the problem is the Leyline Binding just stops all my stuff because it's a double Leyline Binding. And so I think it's talent. Chapter 2, see what they do. Weird. Alright, I'll just make a food. Say go. Yeah, in order to mill them, though, we have to have chapter 2. Oh, this is a bummer. We don't have a way to sacrifice either, so this is probably too much, especially with the Leyline Binding. I'm just going to concede. Alright. They just have too many resources there for us to fight through. So if I want to do Deadly Dispute stuff, I think I still want the Bitter Triumph just to stop Elish Norn. Pick your poison's obviously fine. Thoughtseize is good. I think I'm going to trim 1 Thoughtseize though. I want to just try to combo them quickly and fight through all of their interaction. And in order to do that, I think we just want pick your poisons in heavy numbers. And I think I'll just do 3 Deadly Dispute. But I think I like having 2 Bitter Triumph just to stop exactly Elish Norn. Okay, this hand's pretty good. We're going to keep. I don't really want to Thoughtseize early. I think I want to Thoughtseize on like turn number 3. Although I'm going to Heaped Harvest on 3, so I guess I want to Thoughtseize on turn 4. Yeah, we've been talking about it. I've had Haywire Might in multiple other builds before. Okay, they're on 6. Mostly, I just don't think much matters until Enigmatic, and so I just want to give them time to draw it, and so I have more information. Most of their 1-2 drops are just removal spells. Let's just Familiar, and then we'll just play tapped Overgrown, and then we'll play Harvest on 3, pick your poison, Thoughtseize, something else on 4, something like that. That's another reason why I'm not like super into Thoughtseize in the matchup. It's just like just another thing, you know. Trades for resources 1-1, which is good against some very specific stuff. I've been liking Ygra decks and Pioneer quite a bit. Liking them quite a bit. I've been writing about them a lot on my Patreon if you're interested and to know more. I have a Ygra Jun sideboard guide, as well as a bunch of material on Golgari. Alright, so I'm going to start with pick your poison on enchantment, see what they do. We get the cat back probably. Then I'll do it again on the Fable, and then I'll Thoughtseize them. I want them to have the least info imaginable, or least info possible for when they cast pick your, or for when they choose for pick your poison. I guess it doesn't matter. All roads lead to Rome. Detention Sphere. So they don't have green mana. Moonblessed Cleric, Chained Deputy. Deputy can be annoying later. Moonblessed Cleric lets them go get something scary, though, so let's just take that. They have green mana from the treasure of the token. That's true. That's a good call. Deputy Detention. Let's see if they target. Probably the cat. Alright, so we'll just sack this, go get a land. And then next turn, if we don't have anything, we'll buy Gigantha. Another reason why Thoughtseize is a bit weak in the deck is because it doesn't create material, and so we basically run each other out of resources. But I don't have anything left over on the board. I am ahead on mana, though. Them getting in with the tokens a bunch is tough. I don't think Fatal Push is that good in the matchup, but I think really we just need better targeted enchantment hate. I think Haywire Might's probably the answer. It'll be better against Agatha Soul Cauldron as well. So they drew, they're going to play Presence, so now they have access to green. Spirit's playable in Pioneer right now? I don't think so, because I think Mayhem Devil is very strong. Not attacking with the Deputy seems strange. They have perfect info. Wow. So they drew Land Enigmatic as their 2 draws? Tough. Now they go get a 3-drop. Maybe something that kills Oven like Skyclave. And now we're just out of stuff. And we have to fight Enigmatic. We go through 2 Pick Your Poison. So we have 2 Besage, 2 Pick Your Poison. Otherwise, Incarnation is just very, very tough. They have Chain of the Rocks as well. You think you're the only sack person in your city? Weird. Alright, we'll just play Gigantha, and when they go for Chain on it, we'll sack it. Unfortunately, Chain doesn't say any creature. It can only hit opponent's creatures. Otherwise, we could sack this in response, and they'd have to chain their own thing. That's just not how it works. Unfortunate. Definitely going to block if they attack. Guess they're just fine with losing their creature, or they're just playing deal 3 to it somehow. Either way, they have chain already. Wow. Really sicko. Really sicko on their part. Alright, I think we're basically dead. We've been run out of resources. We drew way too many lands. We needed to draw Scavengers earlier. Pick your poison. We need something that's more effective. Maybe the gift. Did I get the last trophy? This is the trophy match. Or trophy, yeah. They might chain to the rocks here. I have to kill one of the enigmatics now. If I wait till the end step, one of them can sack the other, and they both go on the stack. But it can't sack itself. So they can play chain, and they can sack it to go get the otter. But I'm basically out. I don't have much going on. Yeah, we did. I looked over all the matches that I had played. I guess there's some chance I just draw a million deadly disputes and can figure something out. But we'll take our 7 down to 5. They can buy Yorion. They can't cast it. Any enchantment lets them Enigmatic and double trigger, which is sick. Them drawing Enigmatic after the Thoughtseize is how the game ended. But a natural drawing Elish Norn also tough. Okay, flooded out really bad. Nothing we could do. Okay, so 4-1 with our first take on the Heaped Harvest Ygra sack. What I learned is that Heaped Harvest is quite good. What I also learned is that non-permanents like Bitter Triumph and Fatal Push and Deadly Dispute have extremely diminishing returns. And so we need to find better cards to replace Bitter Triumph. And I think we probably need to go down to like 3 Deadly Dispute. We might need another land to make full use out of Heaped Harvest, but we could also trim a Heaped Harvest. The Shambling Ghast, I think, was a failure. I would probably cut that. And I think we really just need maybe some more stuff to do with our mana base, and maybe it's a second Fountain Port. But we had a game that round where Fountain Port killed us, and so I'm not 100% on that. Sideboard, Leyline, kind of wonky. Pick Your Poison, kind of wonky. The format's a bit different now, so I think we just need to explore alternatives in terms of how to interact with the graveyard, as well as artifacts and enchantments. Meathook Massacre was pretty good. Giganto's pretty mid, so I think maybe we just main deck some Meathook. Main deck Meathook also makes our Heaped Harvest a lot better, because we can play an early Heaped Harvest and sack time, right, in order to ramp. And then we can catch back up with the Meathook Massacre killing everything. Overall, I say that this deck is probably the best of the Golgari food builds that I've built in terms of how it felt to play. Anyone who plays a bunch of ways to kill Trail of Crumbs in their main deck is going to be a tough matchup. Farewell, Temporary Lockdown, Portable Hole, various disenchant effects. If our opponent can kill Scavenger's Talent and Trail of Crumbs game 1, our life is just harder. 7 basics felt like enough for Heaped Harvest. I never really ran out in a spot where it mattered. 2 Boseiju was good. I might want a third in the sideboard. I think 3 Ygra is right for this build, but I do like 2 Ygra in the Jund Sack build now. And that's about it, man. I will probably be playing Standard tomorrow. Standard is an important format for me for Saturday. We are playing the MTGO Creator Challenge, and I am not sure what I'm playing yet. My gut instinct is to play Boros Convoke, because it's very powerful, and the card Pyroclasm doesn't exist in Standard yet. And I think that people are just going to be somewhat underprepared for Convoke in general. It's just a very powerful deck in Standard. But that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for our sponsors for today's stream. Paradise Games and Gifts is a game store out of Fairfax, Virginia. You can check out their website at gcpairodice.com. and get some singles for your next Magic or other trading card game event. They have singles for Disney's Lorcana, as well as Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. And I believe Star Wars trading card game as well, now that the game is picking up popularity, but I'm not 100%. Paradise Games and Gifts is formerly known as Games and Comics Paradise. And so if you've heard me talk about that store, it is the same store. They are changing their business model slightly and going through a name change. gcpairodice.com. Next up, Moxfield. Moxfield is a deck building website that we use to build and share all of the decks that we play here on stream. If you'd like to check out this deck list for yourself, you can check out our Moxfield page in the link in the video description if you're on YouTube. If you're watching this live, ! deck or deck list will take you to our Moxfield page. Also, thank you so much to Apex Gaming. Apex Gaming is a store out of Caldwell, Ohio. I've been doing commentary for their tournament series at Apex Con with my friend Ross Merriam, and we really enjoy going up there. So if you're in the Caldwell, Ohio area, check out apexgaming.gg for information about some of their tournaments coming up. The September 20th weekend, we have a Modern Open on Saturday and a Team Open on Sunday. And if that interests you, make sure to go to apexgaming.gg. Lastly, I'm Tandy. I am full-time Magic creator. I write a lot of articles, sideboard guides, and deck spotlights on my Patreon. And you can check that out at patreon.com/Tandy. It's only $5 to get 95% of the benefits. It helps me make content full-time, and I appreciate any support y'all can give me. Thank you so much to everyone who hung out today, watching on stream. And big shout out to Ygra. It's a big cat. Thanks for hanging. I'm Tandy. I'll see you next time.